Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth telling and myth busting. And this is our All Things Africa edition. And moments. Yes, this is our All Things Africa edition. And while I promised we would continue exploring the continents and we're covering North Africa, and I promised we would cover the history and current affairs of Egypt, Abayomi and myself decided that we'll resume the series next week, Friday. Today, we're going to look at all of the crazy current affairs and news that's been happening in Africa from late November and December. And, this month we'll be covering Nigeria, Benin, Guinea Bissau, Cameroon, Somaliland, Uganda, Rwanda and Congo, Zaire, DRC, and maybe if we have some time, Ethiopia, or we can do a very brief overview of what's happening in Ethiopia. And we welcome back to the program Abayomi Azikiwe, our returning champion, our historical guide to Africa. He's a historian and independent journalist of Pan-African Newswire and frequent contributor to Black Agenda Reports. And just before we go into the topics, a reminder to donate to One Plus One at our PayPal. If you prefer another way to donate, then get in touch at yurismatter@gmail. And please share One Plus One widely across social media and email. Help us overcome the far-right algorithms and monopoly Western state media, Western corporate media, and still leftists have by, again, sharing One Plus One and by sharing One Plus One widely. And Facebook sometimes blocks me from sharing widely. So again, it's very important that people share our present and past episodes, our playlist, and whenever a new episode comes, please share us. And now on to the topic at hand. First off, Abayomi, welcome back to the program. Happy New Year. I've missed you, and I know those of us who follow our Africa series have missed you. So it's great to have you back.
Great.
To
We're back.
Series.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, so and of course and yes, so folks, so every Friday we'll be covering each African country from all regions, but today we're doing a catch-up of the major news that happened in Africa over the holidays. So my first question, Abayomi, is what can you tell us about the Donald Trump administration making threats to Nigeria about not suppressing radical Islamic extremists enough, or accusing the current Nigerian government of persecuting Christians? And I believe Boko Haram attacked a school again and kidnapped many children, and then released some hostages. And then during a far-right conference, Turning Points USA, Nicki Minaj, very popular hip-hop EDM pop musician, gave this bizarre press conference, and she used her social media to encourage the Trump administration to attack Nigeria because Christians are being persecuted. So do tell us, what did we miss? If I got anything wrong, please feel free to correct me. And again, explain what really is what are the real issues, and is there any tribalism, sectarianism going on in Nigeria? What's your response?
Well, we had discussed before the legacy of British colonialism in Nigeria. It was an indirect divide and rule strategy that prevailed from the late 19th century all the way to the present, actually. The country got its independence in 1960. And then approximately 6.5 years later, there was an outbreak of a civil war.
Yeah.
There was the massacre of the Igbos in the northern part of Nigeria, which led to a secessionist movement calling for the removal of the Igbo population in the southeast from the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That war went on for approximately 3 years. A lot of people were killed. Estimated 1 million people were killed during that war, and it resolved nothing because the country remained as a unitary state, but there are still factional as well as regional issues in Nigeria. Even in the South, just recently, there's been a resurgence of the so-called Biafran movement. The leader, a man by the name of Kanu, was just sentenced to a long term in prison for advocating the partitioning of Nigeria once again. And that is no solution to resolving the conflict in Nigeria. Nigeria has the largest population of any other African state. It is a very wealthy country in regard to its crude oil production and other resources. Yet at the same time, due to the fact that it has maintained close ties within the world capitalist system, they cannot develop along the lines that would benefit the working people, young people, farmers, etc., cultural workers, revolutionary intellectuals. They are all being alienated and exploited by the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which remains very closely a part of the Western imperialist camp. What was really interesting about developments there is that Trump said that they were persecuting Christians. Well, this is absurd. The conflict in Nigeria has nothing to do with religious interests. You have jihadist groups that have been functioning in the north of the country now for about close to 18 years. In fact, since 2009, when the Boko Haram developed, the Boko Haram situation developed, it's been like 17 years now. It had nothing to do with them promoting the elimination of the Christian community in Nigeria. There are large Christian community inside the country. And some people estimate that the country is about half Christian and half Muslim. But this form of Islamic jihadism, in my opinion, is promoted by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the US military. We've seen a similar pattern in other West African states. In Mali, for example, last year, it was revealed that the government in Ukraine, which is backed by the United States, had been funding the JNIM, that group which has been attacking the Malian government. And this caused a break in diplomatic relations between Ukraine and Mali, as well as other states in the Sahel region that are part of the Alliance of Sahel States. So this has nothing to do with religion. It is a regional conflict, but it is a regional conflict and dispute that's being fueled by imperialism. And we noticed recently that the JNIM group has developed some presence in northern Nigeria. Most of the attacks that have been occurring, the Boko Haram and the Islamic State of West Africa, those attacks have been occurring in the northeast of Nigeria, in Borno State and other states in the northeast. But the Trump administration on Christmas Day bombed an area in the northwest where the attacks have taken on more of a criminal character as opposed to some type of notion of a religious fundamentalism. So what has happened is that the Nigerian government, not being clear as it relates to their position against the West, against the United States in regard to their bombing of the country, their response was quite contradictory. On the one hand, they said, no, the conflict inside of Nigeria is not a religious conflict, but we do need assistance in combating the so-called jihadists or terrorists. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you need help from imperialism, and then at the same time, you deny the rationale of imperialism for carrying out these attacks. It makes no sense whatsoever. So I think,
I have to ask this question because I'm surprised that even our fellow Pan-Africanist leftists have sort of missed this in the coverage of Nigeria. But what I find the most baffling about what Obama did with Nigeria and the whole Boko Haram thing, and what the Trump administration and the Biden administration and the Trump administration again is the following: is I'm blanking on the name, but Goodluck Jonathan, his political party is a far right pro-capitalist party. The current Nigerian government is also a far right pro-capitalist, pro-Western political party. And I believe the current government and the party of Goodluck Jonathan, they're both members of these of the global right-wing movement, where all of these, right-wing parties and far-right parties get together to talk about how they can advance a right-wing agenda. Part of the local African branch of the International Democracy Union and the CDI, I believe. And so I just find it quite baffling that the Trump administration, his Republican Party, is a member of these organizations, and that they would sabotage and undermine and cause destabilization in one of their most
Allies.
allies.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm curious your response on that. Why does the West do that to some of their loyal African countries? And of course, we're going to be talking about Congo later. But Congo is it's almost like it's almost the exact same thing when we talk about the West's epic betrayal of Mobutu, and then supporting Rwanda and then destabilizing Congo. So why is the Trump administration and the West at large doing this to Nigeria?
Yeah, I believe that the Trump administration and his advisors are trying to reconfigure the world imperialist construct. And not only is he attacking the Federal Republic of Nigeria, look at what is happening in regard to the Kingdom of Denmark.
Yeah.
He went to Davos earlier this week and said essentially that they're going to take Greenland one way or the other. And this has woken up the European Union and the European members of NATO. NATO, of course, is led by the United States. I don't think it could function without the United States. But yet what he's doing is destabilizing the alliance that was established during the post-World War II period. Canada is another good example. He and Mark Carney had choice words for each other just a couple of days ago in Davos, Switzerland. England has had to speak up, although quietly, to say that it doesn't make any sense to impose tariffs on people who are opposed to the U.S. taking over of Greenland. So it's total confusion and chaos that the Trump administration is fostering. But the breakup of NATO, in my opinion, would be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it would really prompt a reconfiguration of the world system that would undermine U.S. influence. So I think what he's doing, in a way, as bad as it is going to lead eventually to a break between the Western European countries, the former socialist countries in Eastern Europe, against the United States. And even Canada is estranged right now from the United States. So to the extent that they can destabilize the NATO alliance would be a good thing for people in the global South. So Trump really doesn't realize that the United States on its own cannot dominate the world without the support of the Western European countries, the post-socialist Eastern European states, and that is the reality of the situation. So he wants to fight the entire world on its own. And the contradiction in that, too, is that the United States itself is not united. There are huge political divisions that are going on right now inside the United States, even within the MAGA camp, because they were divided over the Epstein files. And some of them are very, very nervous and weary about this focus on imperialist designs internationally. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, who was the biggest fool that the Trump administration has now broken with them. They're calling her a traitor. She's resigned from her position in the United States Congress. So this is just an illustration of the contradictions that the imperialist system led by the United States is facing right now. Even though it's bad, even though people are suffering, but the global South needs to wake up, and also the countries in Europe need to wake up and realize that the United States is not their salvation.
In fact, because you mentioned Canada, I thought it was bizarre, because the Liberal Party was basically weak Justin Trudeau resigned, just like his father. Very unpopular, prime minister with not much of a legacy to speak of, and and then Mark Carney, duller than the plank of wood, and many people thought that the Conservatives were going to finally have
Right.
their comeback under Pierre Poilievre, who the Conservative Party of Canada, as it currently stands, was very, pro Donald Trump and thought finally we're going to, open up all of our pipelines and Alberta and whatnot. But then Donald Trump ended up making Canadian nationalism and the Liberal Party great again with his threats of annexing Canada.
Yeah.
And
And this could
so
happen in Western Europe as well.
so
It
you
could
had
happen.
you had the right wing conservatives and their allies, in Ontario, and so forth, just sort of baffled, like, okay, now we have to be Canadian nationalists, but we actually have to push back against Donald Trump, who's actually our kindred spirits. And he basically caused the Liberal Party to have a humongous,
Yes,
majority. So,
he did.
and
He
and
did. And
he's
they have a mandate to resist Trump's encroachment in Canadian territory. And it doesn't make any sense. Canada is one of the strongest allies of the United States, just like the United Kingdom. And he's alienating them as well as alienating more and more people inside the United States. Even a lot of the racists and the ultra conservatives are lining up against him at this point. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, in the next few months. But in regard to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, they need to correct their position. They cannot be apologists for Trump in regard to his concern about fighting Islamic terrorism. That is, Islamic terrorism has its origins in the intelligence services of the United States, going all the way back to the late 1970s, early 80s in Afghanistan with the formation of Al Qaeda, and then later in Iraq and northern Syria with the formation of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and then the offshoots of those groups. I mean, look at Syria today. I mean, it's being run by an Al Qaeda affiliate, the HTS. So it's really a contradiction that's going on, and these contradictions will, of course, lead to a weakening of U.S. influence internationally. And Nigeria has a lot to deal with internally in regard to the factional disputes, the regional divisions inside the country, but now facing a potential military onslaught by the United States. And if you looked at the photographs from the bombing that took place last month, it didn't appear as if a lot of people were killed. Some people's homes were destroyed, but the area in which they bombed was largely a small, like a small town village area that was impacted. And there has been no follow-up, as far as I know, to that attack. So this is total chaos, what we have going on right now, emanating from Washington, D.C. The capitalists inside the United States swung heavily to support Trump because they've been making a lot of money through his tax cuts and other measures. But at the same time, we saw earlier this week a huge decline in the stock market, and that had a lot to do with the chaotic policies of the Trump administration. Because I think the capitalists, those CEOs and stockholders who run even the tech industry, realize that they cannot function on their own, absent of collaboration with the capitalist countries in Europe. So it's a very, very difficult situation that's taking place right now. Nigeria is going to suffer even more because if they're being targeted by the United States, who are they going to ally themselves with? They've been heavily apprehensive about Russia. As you remember, in 2024, when they had those huge demonstrations to end bad governance, there were people there who were flying Russian flags. So the government took that as a threat. could possibly be some type of military intervention like what happened in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and Mali, and other countries to overthrow the civilian government and to reach out to the Russian Federation for assistance in regard to security interests of the country. I think that's a major fear on the part of the Bola Tinubu government, of the All Progressives Congress, the APC. So they don't want to irritate or aggravate the United States, but at the same time, to buy in to their false narrative about the country is also problematic. We'll have to see what happens in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But as I said earlier, it doesn't make any sense what the U.S. administration is advocating at this point. And it's not just Nigeria. We see what's going on in Somalia with the recognition by the State of Israel of Somaliland, which is now recognized as being an independent sovereign state. So Trump himself was toying with the idea.
Abayomi,
Yeah.
if I can interrupt, that was actually going to be my last question. But actually, let's talk
Okay.
about let's actually talk about Somaliland. So this is a breakaway
Okay.
region. So it's a breakaway region of Somalia. Somalia has long been plagued by civil war, brutal Western sanctions, and brutal triple Western interventions. And each time Somalia is close to finding some stability, the West sabotages it. So
Yes.
Somaliland is a region which would like to separate from Somalia, and they do have tons of legitimate grievances that must be addressed. However, the West has often tried to influence Somaliland so an African type of balkanization can occur. At the moment, the African Union and many nations globally are reluctant to recognize Somaliland as an independent state, but Israel, yes, the genocidal ethnocracy Israel, recognized Somaliland, causing a huge diplomatic crisis in the Horn of Africa and bad ripple effects across the continent. So, what is Israel, another Western proxy, playing at doing this with Somaliland? And then remind our audience, why do Pan-Africanist leftists and anti-imperialists, such as yourself, as well as your comrades at Black Agenda Reports and members of Black Alliance for Peace, why are you opposed or certainly reluctant to support Somaliland's bid for self-determination when isn't the conflict between Somaliland and Somalia similar to those in Eritrea that wanted and got through bloody conflicts, got their divorce from Ethiopia? And so very curious your response to that.
Yeah, I think Somaliland is a little different. It was formerly dominated by Britain, and there's a strategic port there that the Israelis want access to in order to fight against the resistance forces in Yemen. And Yemen says that they're not going to let up. You know, if they do want to set up a naval base in Hargeisa, in Somaliland, then it's going to be a problem for the Israelis. Now, Trump had toyed with the idea earlier, but then the Israelis jumped in and said, yes, we'll recognize Somaliland. But I don't believe they did that without consulting first with the White House. So inside Somalia itself proper, there's been huge demonstrations, anti-Zionist demonstrations, which is also a good thing because these countries who are allied with the United States also have to come out and oppose what is going on in Gaza and throughout Palestine and throughout the entire region of West Asia. And what has happened is that in Somalia itself, hundreds of thousands of people have come out to demonstrate against the state of Israel and its recognition of Somaliland, which is very, very positive. And also the African Union has issued a
One moment, folks.
But Trump has said very little about this this initiative on the part of the state of Israel. Israel really wants to buy recognition and support throughout the world. And in Africa, as we recall, back prior to the El Aqsa flood, they were attempting to buy off all these different African states to recognize them through the so-called Abraham Accords. This was done in Sudan in 2020 during the last days of the Trump administration, where he actually strong-armed Abdallah Hamdok, who was an interim prime minister, who's still there, who's still a political player in Sudan, to accept the recognition of the state of Israel as a legitimate entity. And that was even in contravention of Sudanese law, because in 1958, they were one of the first countries to pass a Israeli boycott act as early as 1958. And Hamdok had no authority because there hadn't been any elections. It was only an interim government, which still exists today, even though he's not a part of it. It's dominated now by the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, of Abdel Fattah al-Burhan.
Yeah.
So yes, all these contradictions are blowing back at the Zionists as well as the imperialists. This board of peace, which is absurd. You have to have $1 billion to sit on the board, according to Trump. And so some people are rejecting it. There was a rumor going around that they had asked Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, to join. And his response was, yeah, if you first release the funds that you've frozen in Europe, and we'll consider it. Because they know they're not going to do that. The Europeans are not going to release that money. The Ukrainians are losing the war, although they're still arming them. But it's very little hope that the situation will be reversed in 2026.
And do you and it's the reason why you and like-minded colleagues at Black Agenda Reports, Black Alliance for Peace are the reason why you guys are reluctant to support Somaliland independence, because you just feel that that whatever legitimate grievances that they do have, those definitely do need to be corrected. But this is just going to unleash more Western imperialism, conquering and dividing. Just like, I mean, you mentioned Sudan. The breakaway South Sudan ended up becoming a failed state. And both Sudans now, it's just a free-for-all civil war where the West is supplying multiple sides and just seeing who becomes the winner, because an unstable Africa is not in the West's interest. So
yeah, stable Africa is not in their interest. Unstable Africa is in their interest, and that is the policy of the Trump administration and even previous administrations of Joe Biden, etc. Because we can't forget that Biden did absolutely nothing to curb the genocide that's taking place in Gaza. He even went and met with Netanyahu after they had bombed a hospital in Gaza City that killed nearly 500 people. So blood is on their hands, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. The Republican Party just seems to be more extreme at this point, and they're going to continue this policy because they have no other solution to the crisis that they're facing. But their proposed solution is just going to cause more world tensions, as well as tensions inside the United States. We see the demonstrations that are going on all over the country here in the U.S. And even today, there's solidarity demonstrations around the country with the people in Minneapolis. So whether it's Somalia, Somaliland, there's also Puntland as well, which is another breakaway region which claims to have self-government. But the purpose should be to bring together all the people that are in what is today considered Somaliland. Now, this can be controversial as well, because you have Somali populations in Kenya, in Ethiopia, and also in Djibouti. So they're spread out between about 5 different states. But I think the Somali borders that exist today need to be maintained. And breaking up the Somalia even further is not going to benefit African people. It's not going to benefit the continent as a whole. It's going to further weaken the African Union. And this is what we want to avoid as Pan-Africanists and as anti-imperialists.
Interesting. Tell us what happened in Benin. There was an attempted coup, and what important information and historical knowledge you'd like to explain about Benin to understand what happened there and what's the latest going on.
Well, this is very, very interesting as well because President Patrice Talon was overthrown, and the Nigerian military, with the assistance of Ghana and some other states, and possibly the United States, went in and reimposed him in power. Talon reimposed him in power and reversed the military coup that was taking place inside the country. So I think this is a major development because they wanted to do a similar situation in 2023 when Mohamed Bazoum of Niger was overthrown by the government there in Niger, the CNSP. So yes, this is very, very important developments, and the intervention of Nigeria to reimpose a pro-Western civilian government is also a threat. And that was a statement that was issued by the Communist Party of Benin, saying that they opposed, what Talon was doing, and they opposed military leadership inside the country, but they looked at the broader issue, and that broader issue was the pro-Western Nigerian government's intervention to reverse that coup. So it's a very complicated situation, but I think the left, even in Benin, recognizes the danger of what is taking place and the role of Nigeria in regard to acting as a surrogate of U.S. and Western imperialism as a whole.
It's safe to say that this is one of those situations where, we covered both Sierra Leone and Liberia several weeks ago. Was this one of those situations where there's no good guy or bad guy because the current government of Benin, of course, is very capitalistic, but the military, unless it's supported by the broad left and so forth and by people power movements, okay, but this was sort of different factions of right-wingism going on for.
Yeah, I didn't see what the real program. The person that attempted to stage the coup was a high-ranking military official inside the country, and there was no indication that there was going to be any fundamental shift in domestic or foreign policy. It's not like what's going on in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and in Mali, where they formed the Alliance of Sahel States, and they're trying to build some type of independent existence for those countries in a united fashion. Wasn't really clear what their program was, but at the same time, the left in Benin, as far as I could see, were opposed to the actions of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, their military, and they're headed, of course, by Bola Tinubu. Now, it's interesting in Nigeria, even prior to the U.S. bombing, there was a purge of high-ranking military officers inside the country. So there's a lot of concern, about the potential for military seizure of power in Nigeria. So we'll have to see what happens. But if the country remains unstable, if the prices continue to rise, and if the factionalism inside the country worsens, there's still a potential of some type of military rebellion or seizure of power in Nigeria. The country has a history of that. The last real series of military takeovers occurred between 1993, when there was an election that was slated to be held. And then, of course, Sani Abacha took over and ran the country. He died in office around 1998 or so. And then, of course, in 99, we had the reemergence of Olusegun Obasanjo, who had staged a coup way back in the late 1970s. Now, he did pave the way for multi-party elections in 1979. It brought in Shehu Shagari, but Shagari himself was overthrown 4 years later in 1983 by none other than none other than the person who actually was elected to office several years later. So, yeah, so it's a very the military is one of the strongest institutions in these former colonial states, particularly in West Africa. So they pose a threat to any civilian government. And most of the military governments have been right wing, but in some instances, like what we've seen in the AES, they have had a left wing orientation. And in the past, that has been the case as well. If we go back to Egypt in 1952, with the developments with Abdel Nasser and Naguib, who they did split in 1954, but 1956, of course, the seizure and nationalization of the Suez Canal by Gamal Abdel Nasser was very progressive and very positive in that regard. And the U.S., after the British and the Israelis and the French tried to retake the Suez Canal, the United States told them that they couldn't do it. This was under Eisenhower because they felt it was just a bid by the British to reclaim some of their imperialist hegemony, which had pretty much been completely lost as a result of World War II.
Well, speaking of militaries and so forth, Guinea Bissau, once again, the often far-right military, which you've mentioned, ousted yet another leader. One of my best friends actually is from GB. She grew up in Maryland and later went to my high school, and we became very good friends when university didn't work out for me, and both of us, we were stranded in Belgium. She luckily escaped. So her brother, who I was in touch with, he sent me a message when I reached out 3 weeks ago because of the coup that happened, and he told me that there's calm at the moment. There aren't riotings and people expressing how angry they are that once again that the military meddled in, however imperfect, democratic process, but they intervened in the democratic process nonetheless. What can you tell us about what happened in Guinea-Bissau? And again, any important and historical knowledge you'd like to explain about Guinea-Bissau to help us understand what's currently happening
there? The African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde condemned the coup. They said it was a phony or fake military push. This is how they described it.
Yeah.
That the former president did not want to hand over power to the left forces represented by the PAIGC and their allies, and instead allowed these military forces to take control of the state. The president, Mbalo, he left and went to Senegal, and it seems like the Senegalese government wasn't buying what he was saying. And then the last I heard, he was in Congo, Brazzaville. So we'll have to see if he's still there or not. But yes, it was just to hijack and derail any effort to bring the PAIGC and the left forces back to power in Guinea-Bissau. And that is a very, very tragic situation. And until the masses there can organize to retake power on behalf of the people there, we're going to be stuck with this political impasse in Guinea-Bissau. And also, the interesting thing about Guinea-Bissau is that it is said to be a major hub for trafficking of narcotics. So this could have a lot to do with the fact that they do not want a civilian government, because if there are investigations that are carried out by a PAIGC-led government in Guinea-Bissau, it could reveal high-level corruption within the military and other sectors of the society. And I think they don't want that. They want to maintain the status quo as much as possible. But Guinea-Bissau is a small country, but it has a monumental revolutionary history. Amilcar Cabral, the agronomist, who was a tactician and theoretician of the African Revolution, made a major contribution to Pan-Africanism during the 1960s and 1970s. He was assassinated, of course, in early 1973 by the Portuguese intelligence agencies, PIDE. So we'll have to see what happens in Guinea-Bissau. But in West Africa right now, there are a lot of political jockeying, and there's a lot of instability that's going on. Whether we look at Nigeria, even in the AES states, they're still, the imperialists and their allies are still trying to overthrow them and bring back these pro-Western, either military or civilian regimes. And it's the same situation in Guinea-Bissau as well.
Now, Youri Museveni, once again,
Re-elected.
once again, the Western-backed proxy stooge puppet, whatever term you want to use to denounce this often vile right-leaning douchebag, but Youri Museveni once more won the elections in Uganda. The broad opposition and the fragmented and small left-wing people power movements have been protesting. Bobby Wine, one of the leading opposition figures, who is left-leaning but has some blind spots with the West. He was detained, and I believe he was beaten. I don't know if he still is in custody, but this is another huge blow to African affairs and the left. What can you tell us about Uganda? And feel free to correct me if I got anything wrong.
Well, I mean, Museveni has been in power now for 40 years. And he came to power through force of arms because of the breakdown of the political and civilian governance system in Uganda after the fall of Idi Amin in 1979. And eventually you had Milton Obote, who came back, but he was not able to build a stable government in Uganda, unfortunately. And then, of course, the national resistance movement of Uganda took power in 1986, and they have maintained their authority there for 40 years. And so, but the contradiction about Uganda is that now they're heading the non-aligned movement as well as a group of 77 plus China. So it's really a contradiction that Museveni, who had been so close to the West in the past, both economically as well as militarily, now is making statements that actually challenge a lot of U.S. Positions. For example, he said last month that Uganda, based on its history and topography, would be able to wage a guerrilla war if there was an invasion by the United States. This was reported in the international media. I don't know how true this is.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a very interesting statement that if the United States tried to remove him from power, that his people would actually wage a guerrilla war against the United States. So
interesting.
Whether he's serious about that or not, we'll have to see. But who knows what the Trump administration is going to do next. They bombed northwest Nigeria. They backed, in all likelihood, the attempted efforts to thwart the revolutionary movements in the Alliance of Sahel States, and they're allowing a further fragmentation of Somalia. So it's very, very confusing and very delicate, I would say, political situation that's taking place inside the country.
And before I ask about Cameroon, has Bobby Wine been released from custody, or is he still in custody in Uganda?
The last I heard, he was being held in some type of protective custody. Initially, he was under house arrest. Then he was moved to a more secure, or I would say imprisoned, similar location, prison type location inside the country. What his status is right now, I'm really not sure. I don't think he's been harmed physically, but clearly the National Resistance Movement party is firmly in control in Uganda as we speak.
Unbelievable. Now, what's
been happening? Even Bobby Wine, I don't see him as a viable alternative, left-wing alternative to the National Resistance Movement government. It appears as if the U.S. administration would like to have him in power. I think he did come to the United States for medical treatment a couple of years ago. So I'm not exactly sure in which direction he would take Uganda if he was in fact able to win an election inside the country.
Interesting. Now, yes, and you are very right to be skeptical of a Bobby Wine administration if he was to come in power.
Yeah.
Now what's been happening in Cameroon? The Western Pact, Paul Biya, once more
At
won
92
his
years old.
election or
At
stole his
92.
election, depending on who you talk to. He was formally inaugurated. There have been protests and there have been violent suppressions of them. What can you tell us about? What can you tell us about what's currently going on in Cameroon?
Well, I mean, they control the state. They control the Electoral Commission, and it's very difficult to believe that at 92 years old he would be reelected in a free and fair election. But that was what was declared by the Cameroonian state, and the problems there still exist in terms of the problems between the former English-dominated and the French-dominated parts of Cameroon. There's an effort there to break away and form an independent state that is English-speaking. And I don't see that as being a solution to the crisis in Cameroon. They have to root out corruption, and they have to foster development inside the country. And that has not happened, not at all. And it appears as if the opposition forces are not in any position to either shut down the country and to seize power from Paul Biya, even though he's very old and in all likelihood, there are others who are assisting him in running the country. The opposition has not been able to take charge of the political situation and actually seize power in Cameroon, which has oil resources and other resources that could be beneficial to the people of that West African state.
Unbelievable. And final question is second. Actually, I'll combine my two my two last questions. Is what can you tell us about what is happening in Congo and Rwanda? The horrible surrender of Congolese sovereignty and the blank check that is given to Rwanda under the Western proxy and ethno-nationalist and terrorist Paul Kagame is continuing to loot and pillage Eastern Congo. And we see the current government continues to do little, if nothing, to push them back. What can you tell us about the fake peace process happening in Congo and Rwanda's endless reign of terror? And then another question I want to ask you is, do give us an update on what's going on with Ethiopia between the current government and the Tigrayan separatist movement. Very curious your response to both.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that amazing in terms of Ethiopia, which has one of the largest populations of any other state in Africa. Right now, they're building what is to be one of the largest airports on the African continent. So that's very positive. But there's rising tensions between the government of Abiy and the Eritrean government. Which is unfortunate because they had signed a peace agreement in 2018, two peace agreements, and there was a lot of hope that they would be able to come together and be a powerful force in the Horn of Africa. Ethiopia is desperate for access to the sea, and Eritrea has two seaports, and they were thinking that they would have access to that, but obviously it has not worked out at all. So this is very, very problematic in that regard. But in terms of the TPLF, I think this caused a lot of internal problems when they signed those agreements in 2022 in Pretoria and also later in Kenya. But it has not, the war has not erupted again, but there are still problems with the Amhara militias and the government of the government of Prime Minister Abiy. Uh, Apparently, there was differences over how they should deal with the situation in Tigray. Some of the Amhara forces believe that they should have just gone in and completely taken over Tigray and dominated and run it, as a region of Ethiopia proper. So there was a difference over that. But yes, I think that Ethiopia has a lot of promise, but unless it can effectively normalize relations with Eritrea, to effectively calm the situation in Tigray, and also to bring the Amhara political groups and militia groups together, then of course it's not going to be able to reach its full potential. But the idea about the airport is very positive. And there are also problems going on as well with Egypt over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project, which is functioning right now and which is still causing tremendous problems between Egypt and Ethiopia. And the access to the water, to the Nile, a lot of it had to do with British agreements that were made during the colonial period, and that has to change. But I don't think it's going to change voluntarily under the current government of al-Sisi, who is still very much a part of the Western camp because they still get a lot of resources from the U.S. and they still get military assistance from the U.S. as well. And
And
the other country you mentioned, could you?
Congo and Rwanda. What's going on
Yes,
with the fake peace process, and
it's such a
Rwanda's
tragedy.
ongoing pillaging and looting of namely Eastern Congo, and then the Congolese government, which on paper is supposed to be a left-wing government, but just is doing little to nothing. Talk to us about what's going on with Rwanda and its war against the Congolese people.
Yeah, Paul Kagame and Chesekedi, they did sign an agreement and at a high level, also including the foreign ministries of both states, but the fighting is still going on. M23, they had entered another area in eastern Congo, and it became obvious that this peace agreement is non-existent. And then the U.S. said, well, they called Paul Kagame and said, yeah, you should have the M23 withdraw from Uvira. And the reports are that they have withdrawn. But we don't know exactly how long this is going to last. But all Trump was interested in is critical minerals and metals that exist on a vast level in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I mean, it is probably one of the wealthiest countries in regard to natural resources in the world. And this is the tragedy of the situation. And it's been like this now for well over 150 years since King Leopold II went in around 1876 and started extracting rubber and other resources. And then he ran the country personally between 1876 and 1908. And then they turned it over to the Belgian colonial government, and the situation didn't improve that much. And then in 1960, when it became independent under the MNC Lumumba, they undermined Lumumba's government. It only lasted for a few months.
In fact,
Yeah.
I've recently been reading a good friend of the show, Eve Engler and Owen Schlock, who's also been on the program before.
Mm-hmm.
Canada's long fight against democracy. Today I read a chapter about Congo, and what really shocked me. Eve has been an expert on Canadian Congolese affairs, but I was shocked when reading the chapter, and I thought I knew everything I needed to know now about Congo, but just how complicit the United Nations was in
Yes,
violating the sovereignty of Congo. Hummer.
Hammerjoe.
Yeah, I was very disturbed just how complicit the United Nations was in violating Congo's sovereignty, And again, and this is where people often talk about we need peacekeeping forces around the world. The UN needs to be invested more in peacekeeping, but what United Nations peacekeeping forces basically act as a proxy of Western imperialism, and it was just shocking to
Well,
read about that.
Dag Hammarskjöld, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations during the so-called Congo crisis of 1960, the early 1960s, and he was Secretary General when Lumumba was kidnapped and tortured and executed. After that happened, he claimed he wanted to bring about some type of stability in the former Belgian Congo. And interestingly enough, his plane crashed in northern Rhodesia in 1961. And there's always been speculation and suspicion that it was shot down because they did not want any type of military or political rapprochement between the various political parties and factions and regions inside of Congo. So yes, and there's been several investigations. In fact, there's just been a recent one that I wrote about last year, calling for further exploring who was actually behind that plane crash that took place in northern Rhodesia in 1961. So yes, the United Nations was heavily involved in the destabilization of Congo, and that's because of its rich mineral resources, and they didn't want it to go into the socialist camp either. Because we're talking about 1960, 1961, when the Cold War was extremely intense between the Soviet Union, the Comecon countries versus the United States. So this is a very, very important development that's taking place. But interestingly enough, I read a report a few days ago saying that there was one person that was still alive who was involved in the torture and execution of Patrice Lumumba, and they were contemplating putting this person on trial. I don't know if you heard that.
No, I haven't heard that.
No,
That is very interesting. That is very
it
interesting.
is because after all these years, talking about 1961, that's 65 years ago, this month, that Lumumba was executed, brutally executed and mutilated, by the Belgians and their allies, largely people with around Maurice Chande, who was an agent of imperialism, the U.S., Belgium, all of them. And they sent back this tooth, which they said belonged to Patrice Lumumba. But then they said recently that they're going to open up an investigation after all these years. We'll have to see what happens. If the person doesn't die prior to him coming to trial, they have the information, though. They have the details. The Belgian secret police, the military, and within the Belgian government. And of course, we need that information. But I have very little hope that this person will actually be held accountable. But it wasn't just him. It was the Belgian state as a whole who was involved in that whole process.
Yeah, well,
And there was a documentary film that was made probably 20 years ago on that whole period, made by Raoul Peck, who's Haitian. I don't know if you ever saw that documentary, but it may be
no,
up on.
I don't believe so, and but I am quite familiar with that name, Raoul Peck. And didn't he recently do a documentary about how
Soundtrack of the coup
CIA
d'etat?
used jazz artists and jazz music to
Yes, it's called Soundtrack for Coup d'etat.
yes.
And it's a very interesting take on how the United States used artists in this country, principally African American artists, to promote purportedly goodwill on the part of the United States in all these colonial and post-colonial states. Louis Armstrong, they would send him around. In fact, they actually sent him to Ghana, which was the Gold Coast in 1956. There's films of that. They sent him there. Dizzy Gillespie was another goodwill ambassador. They used to send him to Africa. They sent him to Lesotho in 1978. When I was there years later, people were still talking about the fact that Dizzy Gillespie had visited Lesotho and he was working with the musicians there and so forth. So they're very keen on utilizing culture, principally music, to advance imperialist interests around the world. But it looks like today that Trump is taking a different movement, a different tactic, because, like, for example, the U.S. aid has pretty much been dismantled.
Yeah.
But what he's done, he's signing bilateral agreements for healthcare assistance to various states in Africa. Kenya has already signed it. I don't know how many other states have signed these so-called bilateral agreements to provide medical assistance, rather than sending it through the U.S. aid or through the or supporting the World Health Organization. So the overall public health in various African countries are declining immensely because this assistance is not available. Not to say that the World Health Organization or the Agency for International Development are good. They've done a lot of bad things. But if people don't have medicine, if they don't have access to vaccines, then it's going to be even a worse problem in these countries. And now with outbreaks that are occurring even more frequently, World Health is going to be very, it would be a very precarious situation.
Well, here's hoping that here's hoping that that Congo, that somebody in Congo, I don't know, gets its act together and just says, okay, enough is enough. We have to, with orders or without orders from the president, we have to push Rwanda out of our country, and Congo can, really reclaim its radical independence and get a renaissance.
Exactly. And Rwanda, they keep saying the excuse they're using is that they have people who supported the genocide that are living in the eastern part of the country. The Interahamwe was the term they used 32 years ago when the genocide took place in Rwanda in 1994. Now, the Congolese government has denied that, but I still do not believe that is a justification for funding M23. And there are other rebel groups. This is why the peace agreement was so absurd.
Yeah.
Because what about the other groups that are there that are fighting against the government and governmental institutions? They're not even mentioned. And the M23 was not even brought into the discussions.
And then not only that, but the biggest scandal about Rwanda is that Paul Kagame himself actually was the one that shot down the planes, and what happened in Rwanda was basically a really bloody, people don't want to acknowledge it, but it was a very bloody civil war, more or less, between the two tribes. Kagame ended up, Kagame ended up, winning, and funnily enough, the UN peacekeeping forces under Canadian General Romeo Dallaire basically knew all of basically knew all about what Paul Kagame was doing, and de facto supported him. And then Paul Kagame wants to continue to, I don't know, create a greater Rwanda or whatever by attacking Congo. So here's hoping that that Congo and people power movements can hold Kagame into account and push Rwanda out of Congo.
But just to mention that the RPF has claimed that they did not shoot down those the plane that killed the leaders of Rwanda and Burundi, but at the same time they're claiming that France or some of the peacekeeping forces that were there actually shot down the plane, whether it was deliberate or by accident. So I think there needs to be further investigation into that. But what was interesting about that whole process went on for about 3 months between April and July, I believe, of 1994. The United States government under Bill Clinton refused to designate what was happening in Rwanda as a genocide. And after that, they formed a very close alliance with the RPF government. They were even utilizing them to carry out military operations in the region. And the RPF does have a pretty strong military force at this point. In fact, they were even invited into northern Mozambique in Cabo Delgado to fight against the so-called Al-Shabaab rebel group there. Because in Cabo Delgado, they had a huge project, ExxonMobil project, to develop liquefied natural gas for export around the world.
Yeah, and then there's the Uganda connection, and that
Yeah.
Kagame was basically a proxy of Youri Museveni when
Yes.
when he actually invaded Rwanda, and it's funny how. Also, that it's hilarious how that often always gets completely ignored when folks
Right.
talk about Rwanda. Was that Paul Kagame and his RPF forces invaded Rwanda, and had all of these armed proxy troops just walking around the country, and everybody going, "What's going on around here?" So that's
Yeah. And of course, there was a split, though, between the RPF and the National Resistance Movement of Uganda, even back during the late 1990s, early 2000s, over, I guess, how to divide up the spoils in the Eastern DRC. So it's a very, very interesting situation that is taking place, but they need to honor the sovereignty of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, that is Rwanda, and Uganda as well. Has had their interventions there as well. We know what happened between 1998 and 2003 that brought in the Southern African Development Community to beat back the Rwandan and Ugandan intervention in 1998, which was a hostile intervention. So yes, all of these African states in the east and in the central part of the continent have tremendous potential, but yet the legacy of colonialism and the ongoing neocolonialism and imperialist subterfuge, that is what has to be defeated in this current period.
exactly.
And if it's not defeated, then it's going to be even more turmoil taking place on the African continent.
Well, we were joined on this edition. That's a great place to end. Well, we were joined on this edition of 1+1, our All Things Africa edition, journey across the continent, with Abayomi Azikiwe, our returning champion, our historical guide to Africa. He's a historian, an independent journalist of Pan-African Newswire, and frequent contributor to Black Agenda Report. Reminder, folks, to donate to 1+1 at our PayPal. Again, if you prefer another way to donate, again, touch at Youri Smather at Gmail. And again, please share widely 1+1 across social media and email. Please help us overcome the far-right algorithms and monopoly Western state media and Western corporate media and pseudo-leftist websites have, again, by sharing 1+1 widely. And again, Facebook sometimes blocks me from sharing widely, so very important that people share our past and present episodes, our playlists, and whenever a new episode comes, share us widely. And we will be continuing next week. We will be continuing our Africa series next week. We are still in North Africa, and the next country we'll be exploring is Egypt, which might be split into two parts. So all my best until then. Have a great weekend, folks. Good night and good luck. And over the holidays, Chris Ria passed away, so I wanted to say rest in peace to him and long live his music. And adios, folks. And again, free Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, Venezuela, free President Maduro and Cecilia Flores, free Pedro Castillo of Peru, free Imran Khan of Pakistan, and hands off Iran. All my best.
All right. Sounds good.